Lectures on faith. In this video, we will talk about how faith is the principle of power, building on the last video which talked about how it's the principle of action. In Lecture 1, we read, "But faith is not only the principle of action, but of power, also in all intelligent beings, whether in heaven or on earth." How is faith the principle of power? Well, creation, for example, came through faith. By this we understand that the principle of power which existed in the bosom of God, by which the worlds were framed, was faith. Who cannot see that if God framed the worlds by faith, that it is by faith that he exercises power over them, and that faith is the principle of power? God spake, chaos heard, and worlds came into order by reason of the faith there was in him. This is also how man exercises God's power. So with man also he spake by faith in the name of God, and the sun stood still, the moon obeyed, mountains removed, prisons fell, lions' mouths were closed, the human heart lost its enmity, fire its violence, armies their power, the sword its terror, and death its dominion, and all this by reason of the faith which was in them. Had it not been for the faith which was in man, they might have spoken to the sun, the moon, the mountains, prisons, lions, the human heart, fire, armies, the sword, or to death in vain. Now the question is, were all these things done just because some person thought that maybe these things were God's will? Were these things effectual because some person wished that they were God's will? No. In all cases, faith operates through information. So it's a false belief to think that when it says that faith is the evidence of things hoped for, that the people who have faith have no reason to believe it other than their wishing. That's a false belief, and it's ineffectual. Faith operates through information. Just because you don't have evidence in reality that there's going to be a worldwide flood, or that a man will be able to take on a lion and win, doesn't mean that there isn't a reason to believe that. There always has to be a reason, and that reason always has to come from God, directly or through some messenger. Working by faith means obtaining more information and reconciling behavior to it. It's not picking a random goal and then hooking yourself up to that goal or orienting yourself to that goal. It has to come from God. It's information from God that you reconcile yourself to. In Lecture 7, we read, "We ask then, what are we to understand by a man's working by faith? We answer, we understand that when a man works by faith, he works by mental exertion instead of physical force. It is by words instead of exerting his physical powers, with which every being works when he works by faith. God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light. Joshua spake, and the great lights which God had created stood still. Elijah commanded, and the heavens were stayed for the space of 3 years and 6 months, so that it did not rain. He again commanded, and the heavens gave forth rain. All this was done by faith, and the Savior says, 'If you will have faith as a grain of mustard seed, say to this mountain, remove, and it will remove. Or say to that sycamore tree, be ye plucked up and planted in the midst of the sea, and it shall obey you.' Faith then works by words, and with these its mightiest works have been and will be performed. The critical component is, as Joseph said, words, but it's information. All power comes through obtaining information about or from God and implementing it. Lecture 1 says, "Or may we not ask, what have you or what do you possess which you have not obtained by reason of your faith? Your food, your raiment, your lodgings, are they not all by reason of your faith?" In Lecture 7 we read, "It is by reason of this power that all the hosts of heaven perform their works of wonder, majesty, and glory. Angels move from place to place by virtue of this power. It is by reason of it that they are enabled to descend from heaven to earth, and were it not for the power of faith, they never could be ministering spirits to them who should be heirs of salvation. Neither could they act as heavenly messengers, for they would be destitute of the power necessary to enable them to do the will of God. Also in Lecture 7, we read, "When men begin to live by faith, they begin to draw near to God, and when faith is perfected, they are like him. And because he is saved, they are saved also, for they will be in the same situation he is in, because they have come to him, and when he appears, they shall be like him, for they will see him as he is." Faith is a process of learning more about God and implementing it. Faith, then, is the first great governing principle which has power, dominion, and authority over all things. If you're interested in this topic, I highly recommend you read The Glory of God is Intelligence, because it is all about the process of acquiring more information from God and implementing it in your life.